Hey, you're listening to Cluster Fudge. I'm Alexandra, and today we're talking about the real drug crisis. It's not crack, it's not heroin, it's not even fentanyl, it's alcohol. Yeah, the thing that's legal, celebrated, romanticized, handed out at baby showers, funerals, and brunch. Today's episode, Alcohol Epidemic. Trigger warning, we'll talk about addiction, trauma, mental health, death, and recovery. But this is a safe space, and if you're ready to get real, let's go. Let's be honest for a second. When you think of the word alcohol, what comes to mind? A Friday night out with your friends? A champagne toast at a wedding? Wine after a stressful day at work? Your parents sipping on something to take the edge off? Yeah, that's the thing. Alcohol isn't just a substance, it's a symbol. It's stitched into almost every part of our cultural fabric. From how we celebrate, to how we grieve, to how we bond with each other, drinking is so normalized, it's ritualized. Birthdays, anniversaries, bachelor parties, promotions, breakups. Hell, even funerals have open bars now. We've created this world where drinking isn't just accepted, it's expected. If you say you're not drinking, people look at you sideways, like, are you pregnant? Are you religious? Are you recovering from something? Or worse, are you boring? Pause on that. You can be addicted, spiraling, depressed, blacking out every weekend, and no one will blink an eye. But if you politely decline a glass of wine, suddenly you're the weirdo in the room. How twisted is that? And don't even get me started on wine mom culture. We turned addiction into a punchline. Mugs that say mommy needs her wine, shirts that say rosé all day, memes that joke about drinking to survive parenting. But beneath the jokes is burnout. Unprocessed rage, exhaustion, isolation. And what we're really saying is, I'm drowning and alcohol is the only socially acceptable way to scream for help. It's not just mothers, though. Think about how we treat college kids. We don't just expect binge drinking, we encourage it. It's in the frat parties, the tailgates, the spring breaks. We romanticize it in movies and call it a rite of passage. Then we act surprised when it turns into dependency. You know what this is? It's generational gaslighting. We've convinced entire populations that drinking is a necessary part of adulthood. Like if you're not sipping a cocktail at brunch, you're not living your best life. But that's not living. That's coping. That's numbing. That's avoidance with bubbles and ice. Look, I'm not here to shame anyone. This isn't about being perfect or sober or holier than thou. This is about being honest. Because how can we heal anything if we're still pretending alcohol is harmless? Let me ask you this. When was the last time you went to a social event where alcohol wasn't just available, but actually wasn't the center of it? How many first dates have you gone on where both people were completely sober? How many work events happen without a happy hour? How many weddings, family dinners, baby showers, yes, even baby showers, skip the booze? We've made alcohol the default, and because of that, we've lost sight of something critical. Choice. If everyone's drinking and every moment is soaked in alcohol, then opting out becomes a rebellion. Choosing clarity becomes radical. We say things like, I need a drink, but what we really mean is, I need relief, I need permission to unwind, I need a break from the noise in my head. And that makes sense. But what we don't talk about is what happens when the drink stops working. Because for all the memes, music, and marketing, alcohol is not as harmless as they want you to believe. Stay with me. By the numbers, alcohol is deadlier than you think. Let's strip away the glitter, the cute cocktail names, and the Instagram filters for a minute. Let's talk numbers, because when we talk about alcohol, most people still think of a legal controlled substance, something we consume responsibly and socially. But here's the hard truth. Alcohol is one of the deadliest drugs in the world. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being accurate. Let's start globally. According to the World Health Organization, alcohol contributes to 3 million deaths every single year. Let that sit for a second. That's 3 million families, 3 million holes in someone's world. And not because of war or famine or terrorism, because of alcohol. That makes alcohol responsible for 1 in every 20 deaths worldwide. That includes traffic accidents, alcohol-related diseases, injuries, suicides, and violence. Now bring that into the United States. In the US, alcohol is the third leading cause of preventable death, behind tobacco and poor diet. And if current trends continue, it could rise even higher. Let's get even more specific. 95,000 people in the US die each year from alcohol-related causes. That breaks down to about 261 people per day, not to mention the millions living with chronic illness caused or worsened by drinking. So, remind me again, why do we still treat alcohol like a harmless indulgence? Why are we still joking about wine o'clock while people are literally drinking themselves into early graves? Breaking down the damage! Let's go beyond just the death count. Cancer. Oh, alcohol is now classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the World Health Organization. That means it's in the same category as tobacco, asbestos, and radiation. Oh, it's been directly linked to at least 7 types of cancer, including breast, colorectal, liver, throat, and esophageal cancer. And no, it doesn't matter if it's red wine or vodka or tequila. The ethanol in all alcohol is what's toxic. Alcohol-related liver disease is one of the fastest-growing causes of death among people aged 25 to 34. That's right, not old folks. Young adults, or college grads, people in their first jobs, parents of toddlers. Heart disease and stroke, but despite what old wine studies said, newer research shows even moderate drinking increases blood pressure and stroke risk. Those "a glass of wine is good for your heart" headlines, they were based on flawed studies, many funded by the alcohol industry itself. Mental health and suicide. Alcohol is a depressant, even though we treat it like a party drug. It increases the risk of depression, anxiety, and self-harm. A staggering number of suicides involve alcohol, often because people are more impulsive and less inhibited while drinking. Long-term damage is often invisible. Here's the thing people don't talk about enough. Most alcohol damage doesn't look like what you see in movies. It's not someone passed out in a gutter. It's not always dramatic or chaotic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's waking up every morning with anxiety you can't explain. It's liver enzymes slowly climbing until you're diagnosed with fatty liver at 32. It's forgetting chunks of conversations with people you love. It's insomnia, irritability, burnout that you can't shake. It's fighting with your partner over things you don't even remember saying. And still, you're functioning. You're showing up to work, you're parenting your kids, you're posting smiling selfies. But your body is screaming, and nobody hears it. Because alcohol is just a part of life. Add this to the conversation. Let me hit you with a few more stats that might blow your mind. A 2023 study found that the risk of death increased by 20% for people who consumed more than 1 drink per day. Alcohol kills more people annually than all opioids combined. But who gets the headlines? Who gets the funding? Not the alcohol epidemic, not the legal drug. Because alcohol isn't just deadly, it's profitable. So when people say, well, it's not like I'm doing drugs or anything, I want you to remember this. Alcohol is a drug. It just has better PR. And when we come back, we're diving deeper into trauma, into pain, and why so many of us reach for a bottle when what we really need is healing. What alcohol does to your brain. All right, now that we've unpacked the deadly statistics and the cultural trap alcohol sets, let's get really personal. Let's talk about the brain. That 3-pound powerhouse sitting inside your skull, the command center for everything you are. Your thoughts, feelings, memories, decisions, your very sense of self. What happens to that control center when you drink? Alcohol is a neurotoxin. That means it literally poisons your brain cells, your neurons, in ways that can be subtle and sometimes devastating. When you take a drink, alcohol first targets your central nervous system, the communication network connecting your brain to your body. The immediate impact, the buzz. At first, alcohol acts like a depressant on your brain's GABA receptors. Think of GABA as the brain's brake pedal. When alcohol enhances GABA, it slows down brain activity, which is why you feel relaxed, less anxious, even euphoric. That buzz everyone talks about. It's alcohol slowing your brain's signals and dulling your senses. But alcohol doesn't just press the brake, it also reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for things like decision-making, impulse control, and social behavior. That's why you might do things while drinking you'd never do sober, say something you regret, drive recklessly, or get into fights. So, when you're drunk, your brain isn't just happy, it's confused, slowed, and less capable of managing your actions. Longer-term effects. The brain under siege. With repeated drinking, especially heavy or chronic use, alcohol starts to interfere with the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to adapt, learn, and heal. This makes it harder for you to form new memories or learn new skills. The hippocampus, the brain's memory center, is particularly vulnerable. This is why people who drink heavily often experience blackouts, gaps in memory where the brain literally can't form new memories while intoxicated. Over time, alcohol damages the myelin sheath, the protective coating around nerve fibers that help signals travel quickly. Damage here slows brain communication, leading to problems with coordination, reaction times, and cognitive processing. Chronic heavy drinking can cause brain shrinkage, especially in the frontal lobes, the area linked to judgment, emotional regulation, and executive function. And it's not just the thinking parts that suffer. Alcohol rewires your brain's reward system, flooding it with dopamine, the feel-good chemical. This flood is why drinking feels pleasurable. It activates the same pathways as other addictive drugs. But here's the catch. Over time, your brain reduces its natural dopamine production to compensate. What does that mean? You need more alcohol to feel the same high. That's tolerance and the start of dependency. And when you're not drinking, your dopamine levels drop below normal. You feel depressed, anxious, irritable, craving alcohol just to feel normal again. Alcohol and mental health, a vicious cycle. Alcohol disrupts the balance of neurotransmitters that regulate mood, like serotonin and glutamate. This imbalance can worsen anxiety, depression, and increase the risk of suicide. The tricky part? Many people drink to self-medicate these feelings, which only makes the problem worse. The good news? The brain is resilient. If you stop drinking, your brain can heal, sometimes remarkably so. Studies show that within weeks of sobriety, brain function begins to improve. Memory gets sharper, mood stabilizes, cognitive processing speeds up. But it takes time, patience, and often professional support. So next time you pick up a drink, remember, you're not just ingesting a social lubricant or a party starter. You're introducing a powerful chemical that literally changes the way your brain works. And understanding that, that's the first step toward taking control of your own mind and your life. All right, now that we've laid bare the harsh reality of alcohol's effects on our bodies and brains, it's time to pull back the curtain on the industry behind it all. Big alcohol. The corporations that make billions selling this drug and then spend just as much making sure we don't see the full picture. You've heard about big tobacco, how cigarette companies lied for decades about the dangers of smoking, suppressed research, and marketed to kids. Well, big alcohol? It's playing a similar game. In 2022, the global alcoholic beverage market was valued at over $1.5 trillion. The biggest companies, names like Anheuser-Busch InBev, Diageo, Heineken, and Pernod Ricard. These giants have revenues higher than the GDP of some countries. The marketing machine! Big alcohol spends insane amounts of money, billions annually, on marketing, targeting everyone. Teens, young adults, women, minorities. They package their products as symbols of status, freedom, and fun. Think about all the times you've seen an ad where drinking equals success or happiness, or the way alcohol is woven into music videos, sports events, movies, and social media influencers. It's everywhere. Lobbying and influence! But it doesn't stop at ads. Big alcohol spends huge sums on lobbying governments, the very bodies that are supposed to protect public health. In the US alone, alcohol companies spend tens of millions every year lobbying Congress. Their goal? To block stricter regulations, higher taxes, or warning labels. They fight against policies proven to reduce alcohol-related harm, like minimum pricing or limits on advertising. In some countries, Alcohol companies have direct influence on public health campaigns, shaping messaging to downplay risks and emphasize responsible drinking. The double game responsibility campaigns. You've probably seen those drink responsibly campaigns, right? Or slogans like know your limit. Sound helpful, but here's the catch. These campaigns are often paid for or influenced by the alcohol industry itself. It's what experts call a corporate social responsibility CSR strategy. Basically, big alcohol telling us they care about our health while continuing to sell more drinks. Studies show these campaigns have little to no impact on reducing harmful drinking. In fact, they can create a false sense of security, making people think moderate drinking is risk-free, even though it's not. Profit over people. Here's the brutal truth. The more we drink, the more these companies profit. Alcohol-related deaths, hospitalizations, and family breakdowns, they're collateral damage. Addiction, just another business opportunity for them. They've developed products with higher alcohol content and aggressive marketing to keep customers hooked. And when communities push back, when public health groups call for tougher laws, big alcohol flexes its economic muscle, threatening jobs, tax revenue, and sponsoring politicians who oppose change. The cycle we're stuck in. So what does that mean for us, the everyday people? We're caught in a cycle where alcohol is everywhere, encouraged by culture, easy to access, and backed by powerful companies who don't want us to stop. It's a classic case of profit over people. But here's the thing. Awareness is power. By understanding who's behind the scenes, who's profiting from the pain, we can start demanding better policies, better education, and most importantly, a culture where our health and well-being come before corporate profits. When we come back, we're diving into stories of recovery and resilience, people who've broken free from this cycle, and how they did it. Stay with me. Social media, identity, and sober shaming. All right, we've talked about the deadly numbers, the brain damage, and the industry behind alcohol. But now let's get into something that hits close to home for a lot of us, especially in this digital age. Social media. Yes, those endless feeds filled with photos, videos, and stories, where everyone seems to be living their best, most fun lives. Scroll through Instagram or TikTok, and what do you see? Parties, shots being slammed, cheers and laughter, cocktails with fancy garnishes, celebrations fueled by alcohol. It's everywhere. And here's the kicker. It's not just background noise. Social media has changed the way we see alcohol and ourselves. The social media alcohol culture. Alcohol has become part of the social currency online. Posting a photo at the bar, a snap of your cocktail, or a boomerang of a party is often a way to show you're social, fun, and in the mix. But this creates an unspoken pressure. If you don't drink, or if you choose sobriety, you might feel like you're missing out or less than the people posting. And it's not just about missing the party. It's about identity. Drinking is tied to social identity and belonging, especially for young adults. It's part of how people connect, celebrate, and cope. Saying I don't drink can sometimes feel like saying I'm not part of the group. Enter sober shaming, which brings us to something that's becoming more and more common. Sober shaming. Sober shaming is when people who choose not to drink face judgment, ridicule, or pressure to justify their choice. Comments like, "Why are you being so uptight?" Or, "Come on, have just one drink." Even subtle exclusion from social events where drinking is central. This kind of shaming can be damaging. It can make people hide their sobriety, feel isolated, or even relapse just to avoid the stigma. And that stigma doesn't just come from peers, it can come from family, co-workers, or even social media influencers who glorify drinking. The double standard online. People who post about heavy drinking get likes, comments, and followers. It's rewarded. Meanwhile, those who post about their sobriety, their struggles with alcohol, or their choice to stay clean sometimes get ignored or even criticized. But the good news is this is changing. More people are using social media to build sober communities. Groups, pages, and hashtags like #SoberLife, alcohol free, and Sober Curious are growing. These spaces offer support, celebration, and a place to share victories without judgment. The power of owning your story. Choosing sobriety in a world that glorifies alcohol isn't easy. It takes strength, self-awareness, and sometimes a thick skin. But owning your story, being open about your choices, can break down stigma and change culture. So if you're listening and feeling alone or judged because you don't drink, remember, you're not missing out. You're leading a movement toward health, clarity, and freedom. Alcohol and violence. As we move deeper into the alcohol epidemic, there's a dark, often overlooked side we need to confront: the link between alcohol and violence. Alcohol doesn't just damage individuals physically or mentally, it fuels aggression and can turn moments into tragedies. Studies consistently show that alcohol is involved in a significant percentage of violent incidents worldwide. In the US, for example, about 40% of violent crimes involve alcohol. That includes domestic violence, assaults, sexual violence, and homicides. Alcohol lowers inhibitions, impairs judgment, and increases impulsivity, turning disputes into dangerous confrontations. Alcohol and domestic violence. One of the most heartbreaking connections is with domestic violence. Alcohol is a major factor in intimate partner violence. It doesn't cause violence on its own, but it amplifies risk, making violent episodes more frequent and severe. Victims often face not just physical harm, but emotional trauma that lasts a lifetime. Alcohol and sexual violence. Alcohol also plays a disturbing role in many cases of sexual assault. It can be used as a tool for coercion or manipulation, and its impairment effects can leave victims unable to consent or defend themselves. It's important to say this clearly. Alcohol is never an excuse for violence, but understanding its role helps us address prevention and support victims better. Societal impact and costs. The ripple effect extends beyond individuals. Violent incidents linked to alcohol strain emergency services, healthcare, and the justice system. They affect families, communities, and society as a whole. Addressing alcohol-related violence means tackling both alcohol misuse and the underlying social issues, like poverty, mental health, and education. Ending this cycle starts with awareness, compassion, and strong community support. Sober curiosity and healing. So now what? We've talked about a lot today. The damage alcohol can do, the forces behind the industry, the violence, and the stigma around sobriety. But let's finish on a powerful, uplifting note. There's a movement growing quietly but strongly all over the world. It's called sober curiosity. So what exactly is sober curiosity? It's the idea of questioning your relationship with alcohol without pressure or judgment. It's about exploring what life could look like without drinking, even if you don't identify as an alcoholic or want to quit forever. The rise of sober curiosity. More people are choosing to cut back or quit drinking for health, mental clarity, or just to see how it feels. This movement isn't about abstinence because you have to, but because you choose to. It's about reclaiming control over your body, your mind, and your social life. And the benefits? They're real and wide-ranging. Improved sleep, better mental health, more energy and clearer thinking. Deeper, more authentic relationships because you're engaging with people sober and present. Plus, there's no hangover, no regrets, and more money saved. Healing and community. But sober curiosity is also about healing. Healing from the pressures and pain that led to drinking in the first place. Healing the brain and body from years of alcohol's effects. And healing the soul. Finding peace in your choices. What's beautiful is the community that's growing around this movement. Online groups, sober bars, events, and podcasts, all dedicated to supporting people on their journey. You don't have to walk this path alone. People are sharing stories of how cutting back or quitting has transformed their lives, physically, emotionally, and socially. It's about empowerment, resilience, breaking free from an epidemic that's been normalized for far too long. So, if you're curious about what life without alcohol might look like, or if you're struggling to find your way to healing, remember, it's okay to take one step at a time, to ask questions, to seek support, because every journey to health starts with a single choice, and it can lead to a life that's fuller, freer, and more vibrant than you ever imagined. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Cluster Fudge. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're not alone. Until next time, I'm Alexandra. Stay curious. Stay strong.